Welcome to our session on donor retention made easy. We're going to talk about why donors leave and how to keep them. Let me tell you first a little bit about who you're listening to here. I've recently completed a book, Retention Fundraising, the Art and Science of Keeping Your Donors for Life. This book required 3 years study of 250 organizations in the U.S. and in the United Kingdom, where we interviewed and surveyed about 30,000 donors to find out why they stick with an organization or why they leave organizations. So this is the research, some of the research I'll be sharing with you today. I bring also 50 years of experience in major gifts and in organizing, starting up new organizations. Among some of the organizations you may be familiar with that I helped start was Habitat for Humanity, Greenpeace, the ACLU, Amnesty International, the Heifer Project, and lots more. So I hope to share some of this experience with you as we go through this today. In this session, we're going to cover why the issue of retention is so important, how to measure it, what other key metrics or metrics should you be concerned about, the principal reasons why donors quit an organization, actions the organization, your organization, can take to affect your retention rate, whether donors stay or leave. We'll look at some of the barriers that exist in most organizations and may and most probably exist in yours and what to do about them. And then we'll deal with 5 easy and very inexpensive ways to improve your donor retention rate. So why is donor retention so important, and why should you care? Well, in the United States, 39 cents out of every dollar raised stays with the organization. All the rest goes out the door. So first of all, the issue of attrition or absence of retention or poor retention is a terrific financial drain on the nonprofit world. The inability to hold on to more donors than this is really sad, and it's what's preventing the type of growth that we need to service the beneficiaries of our organizations. Put it another way, for every 100 donors gained in the nonprofit sector in the last 10 years, 105 leave. So we're on a downward slope here in terms of the number of donors that we can hold on to or are holding on to. And so this is a very real problem. Think about it. When you put too much emphasis on acquisition, and most organizations tend to pay far more attention to acquiring donors than they do to holding on donors. But why would they do that when there's less than 2% chance of obtaining a gift from a prospect, from someone who hasn't given to your organization before? And there's only a 20 to 40% chance, but far better than a new prospect, 20 to 40% chance of getting another gift from someone who has left your organization. However, there's a 60 to 70% chance of getting an additional gift from a donor who already belongs or is active with your organization. So if you really want to go where the money is and where you get the best return on the time you put into your work and your investments, this is the field, donor retention, that you need to pay attention to. Do you know what your retention rate is? Most people I talk to in organizations around the country and in Europe don't really know what their retention rate is, and that's really like asking someone, do you know what your heart rate is or your blood pressure is, and they're saying, I don't have the foggiest idea. Yet this is one of the most basic of all vital signs for a nonprofit organization. So let's just do some simple math on how to calculate your retention rate. You can do this after this session, or you can do it during it. It's a very easy calculation to make. First, you count the number of donors who've given to your organization in the most recent year, and then you divide that number by the donors who've given in year 2. So if you're doing 2015, for example, you take the donors who gave in 2013, divide them by the 2014, divide them by the donors who gave in 2015, and that will give you a percentage if you multiply that result by 100. So it's usually donor retention is measured in percentages. So to make the calculation very simple, let's say you had 100 donors who gave in 2014. Only 50 of those donors also made a gift in the next year, 2015. So doing the math, 50 divided by 100, and then multiplied by 100 to get the percentage equals 50%. So the overall retention rate for your organization would be 50%. Now there's another key metric that's important, and it's related to retention, and that's donor lifetime value. Now the lifetime value of a donor is very simple to calculate. It's the amount of money that the donor has given over the number of years they have been active with your organization. So let's say we want a 5-year donor retention rate. We take all the people who have given for 5 years and add up their the amount of money they've given in those 5 years, and that is the donor lifetime value. So every donor has a lifetime value, and the higher the lifetime value, the more, of course, valuable that donor is to your organization. And I call lifetime value the GPS of fundraising, because unless you know that metric and follow that metric, there's really no way you have to measure whether your organization is doing well when it comes to adding value to your organization from those donors who are staying with you. If your donor lifetime value is not going up, the organization is doing something wrong. So it is important to understand lifetime value and what that means to the future of your organization. Now, to show you how lifetime value is an important management or an important strategic tool, let's look at how nonprofits view investment in acquiring new donors versus how the business world, the commercial world, views spending money for customer acquisition. In the nonprofit world, boards of directors, a lot of CEOs, a lot of leadership in organizations don't understand the importance of investing in acquiring new donors, because they don't understand ultimately what the value of those donors is likely to be. So let's take a look at what your board might say. Let's just 3 quick hypotheticals here, and I'll then explain one of them. If you went to your board and said, look, I'd like to spend $24 to get a new donor who will give us $5.90, and it will only cost us $18 to get that $5 gift. Well, your board is probably going to tell you, no, let's not put that kind of money in. And the same would be true if you went to your board and said, we want to spend $250 for a $110 gift, and we're only going to lose $140 on that. And the same would hold true if you went to the board and said, look, we can get a $199 gift, and it'll only cost us $121 to get that money. Well, the board will probably say no, unless there's someone on that board, or unless you have a chief financial officer or someone who understands that the lifetime value becomes important. So let's take a look at a specific example here of Starbucks. Now, Starbucks, they spend $18.40 to sell that first $5 or $4.50 cup of coffee. Yet look what they get for it. Over the years, 20 years, they get $14,000 back for that $18 investment. And that's why knowing lifetime value is so very important. It is impossible to know how much you should spend to acquire a new donor unless you understand how much you're likely to get back from that donor. Are there any questions about where we've gone so far on those fundamental metrics, how to calculate retention rate and the importance of knowing what it is and of knowing what your lifetime value is? You can put questions on the dashboard if you have any, and we'll answer those as we go along, or you can wait until we're finished and ask them then. Either way is fine. Okay, if there are no questions, then I'll turn next to why donors leave. Why do they stop their support? Just take a minute, a few seconds to think in your own mind why some of your donors may be leaving. There are all kinds of reasons, and everyone has a different opinion, but just think for a moment, share with each other why you think donors are leaving Boys and Girls Club. Okay, well here, according to the research we've done and many other research organizations have done, are the principal reasons why donors stop giving. 5% of them think that the charity doesn't need them. They don't see why they should be giving, because after all, we don't know whether they really need us or they don't need us. 8% have no information on how their contributions were used. Now, this is a failure, clearly, of communication from the organization to the donor. If the donor doesn't understand why their giving is important and how the money was used, why should they give again? You know, in the business of fundraising, there are only two subconscious questions that donors really have in their mind when it comes specifically to giving. That is, why do you need my contribution? And secondly, what happened with my contribution? Did it make any difference? So if we're not answering those questions to our donors, we're going to run the risk of losing nearly 10% of them. This is an astonishing figure in my judgment. 9%, nearly 10% of the donors who have left organizations have no memory of even supporting the organization in the first place. And this isn't because most donors are older. It's because organizations haven't done a good job of reinforcing the importance of that donor's gift and the fact that she or he did give. Now here's the unforgivable, or the statistic of the unforgivable. 13% of the people left because they never got thanked for giving a contribution. I mean, we've all, I hope, been taught since childhood that when you receive a gift, it's the polite and correct thing to do to thank someone for it. Yet, as startling as this might be to you, 65% of most American nonprofits don't even bother to thank their donors. So no wonder we're running a risk of losing people if we're not thanking them. And of course, something we can't do anything about is death, because donors are by and large the older cohort of our population. We lose a significant number each year to death. The commercial world loses about 1% of their customers to death. The nonprofit world has a far bigger loss because of that, and that's because giving more than almost anything else is a function of age. And as probably most of you know, if you've met your donors or know much about the demography of your donors, the average or median age tends to be in the 60s, mid 60s, somewhere around that level. Nearly 20% of the donors leave because of poor service or communication from the organization. That again is one of those inexcusable things. They don't get their questions answered. They don't get their addresses changed when they request it. They simply have found the organization unresponsive to their needs, and consequently they leave. More than a third of the organization donors leave organizations because they think there are other charities or other nonprofits or other membership organizations that need and deserve their support more. And that's a statement that organizations are not differentiating themselves from others. They are not showing their donors why the support is important and why they should be picking your organization as opposed to others. And now, given the amount of competition, and you have to realize in the last 20 years, the number of nonprofits in the United States has increased from about 450,000 to 1,400,000. So there's been a more than 3 times increase in the number of nonprofits, most of which are competing for donors' dollars. So you need to make a real concerted effort to show why your organization compared to others is so deserving. 54%, and these figures, by the way, add to more than 100% because of the survey methodology. 54% of the people say they leave because they can't afford it. Now, what we don't know from doing these surveys, or what we do know from doing these surveys, is that I can't afford it is often an excuse to simply not be more specific and say I can't stand so-and-so in the organization, or I don't like the newsletter, or whatever. This is a convenient way of saying they can't afford it. Now, of course, there are donors who can no longer afford it. I already mentioned that donors in the United States tend to be older, and some people go on retirement and have fixed incomes and find it increasingly difficult to give their support. But the fact is that people who want to give will give something. They may not give as much, but they will continue to give. So those are the principal reasons why people leave. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment, because with the exception of death and the person's finances, every other reason on this list of 8 that determine whether someone will stay with you or leave is because of actions the organization has taken or not taken. And frankly, as soon as we all understand this point and act on it, we will see the retention rates improve. I want to restate that because there's a tendency among a lot of organizations to blame the economy, or to blame the elections, or to blame whatever's around to blame for declining income. But that is an equalizer for everyone. It's not that your organization is more affected by a bad economy than some other organization. Everyone's affected equally on that. So the factors that distinguish one organization from another when it comes to holding on to their donors is the actions the organization itself takes that either drive people away or hold people to the organization. And a way to look at this is if you look at the flow of donors into your donor bucket, you get new donors from the pipeline on the left, and you get some other new donors from some of your competitors. I know none of us like to talk about competition in the nonprofit world, but the fact is, as you saw in that previous chart, a third of the people leave organizations to go to other organizations, so we can't ignore it. So the two main sources of money of new donors is from people who've never given to you or people who are giving to other organizations. And they go into your donor bucket, and they leave, as I've indicated in that previous chart, they leave for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's for lifestyle reasons like aging or illness, death, and sometimes it's because they simply switch because they see something more interesting or more important. But look over there at the bottom lower right-hand side, donors that you drive away. Yes, we as an organization take actions that drive our donors away, and we're going to talk about that. And I want at this point to talk about the importance of donor attitude, because this is related to what we've been speaking about just now. The donor's attitude is about your organization, our organization, is what causes the donor's behavior. Now, in the case of fundraising, the behavior is giving money. It might also be volunteering time. It might also be writing letters to the editor. Whatever desired outcome we're seeking in the form of people's behavior is what their attitude will determine. And the actions of the organization are what influence that donor's attitude, whether for the better or for the worse. So again, the actions of the organization. Did you thank your donors? Did you tell them how their money was spent? Do you tell them why they're important? It is those actions that will ultimately influence the donor's behavior. Now let me speak briefly about the donor relationship dynamic, because if you understand this, you understand probably 90% of what has to be done to build effective donor relationships. All human relationships are based on the fundamental pillar of trust. And there are two actions or ingredients that go into building trust. One is consistency and one is reliability. If I say, for example, on consistency, if I say to you, we don't have a relationship, we've just met, but we like to see more of each other and get to know one another. If I say to you, look, I'll see you at Joe's for a cup of coffee tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and I don't show up until 6 o'clock, that's not being very consistent with what I've told you. And if I then apologize and say, well, let's do it again tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and again I don't show up, probably that relationship isn't going anywhere, because there's simply not enough consistency to begin building a relationship. Same, for example, if you've never been to a restaurant and you try a new one, and you like the service, the food's good, the price was terrific, and you decide a week later to go back, but this time the food isn't very good, the waiter is surly, and they have the bill calculated wrong and it's too high. Chances are that restaurant is not going to get a third chance. Well, the same thing happens in the nonprofit world. If let me not use a Boys and Girls Club example. Let me use an example, for example, from the environmental world. If I get an appeal in the mail asking me to give for the first time to protect the whales, and you send in your $25 and you get an acknowledgement, thank you for me that talks about the importance of strip mining and doesn't say anything about whales, chances are you're not going to make a second contribution. And so consistency across all human relationships, whether it's in fundraising or anything else, is very important. Now, reliability is related to consistency. Reliability for a nonprofit would be being able to anticipate what is going to happen if you ask the organization for something. For example, on a very simple level, if I make a contribution and I get a thank you, but my last name is misspelled on the thank you, and it's Carver instead of Craver, and I call the organization and I get someone at the call center or in donor services who is, seems rushed, is pretty rude, says, yeah, we'll make the change if we have time. Well, that's not being reliable, and chances are I'm not going to give again to that organization. Or the same thing happens if people have questions and they call your donor, your contact number, your donor service number, and they don't get answers in a prompt way, or they're ignored. Well, the whole issue of reliability comes into play, and whether it's consistency or reliability that is not working, it erodes the important dynamic of trust. So remember that trust is what we're trying to build when we talk about the issue of donor retention. Sorry, I need my slides organized. So without trust, there is no commitment, there is no loyalty, there is no longevity, there is weakened retention. Both donor loyalty and commitment can be measured. Donor loyalty is measured by what we call retention rates. Donor commitment, which is a little different thing, can also be measured. I'm not going to get into that today because it's there's a bit of science involved, and it'll take too long to explain. But the important thing is that none of this is conjecture on my part or anyone else's part. This has all been empirically worked out and proven by behavioral scientists. So we know that loyalty can be measured. We know what is wrong in terms of negatively affecting loyalty can be identified, and the steps taken to fix that. So the positive and negative actions that are identified that an organization is taking or not taking toward its donors is very actionable, and that is important. And we're going to, at the end here, toward the end, we're going to go into to the easy actions you can take that will basically take care of about 70% of your retention problems. But please understand that it is the actions or inactions of your organization that affect the behavior of your donors and whether they leave or stay. Now, in the course of those 3 years research with the 250 organizations in the United States and the United Kingdom, we surveyed 30,000 donors, and we asked a series of 82 questions that go to the heart of what donors expect from organizations. And we then distilled those down into 7 universal drivers or factors in donor in building strong donor commitment. So I want to go over these, and I'm listing them in the order of priority which our survey revealed them to be. They may not be the same order of priority for your boys and girls clubs, but among these 7, they all are present, and it's just a matter of which is the highest priority and which is the lowest priority. But any one of them, if it's missing, will affect the donor loyalty and commitment of your donor base. The first is that donors perceive that the organization is effective in achieving mission. It was pretty clear from all the research that we did and that has been done by others that donors do give because they believe, for whatever reason, that an organization is effective and that their contributions make a difference. And if you can't show that, then there's trouble in paradise. So that has to be very clearly given to the donors, that they understand what they can expect with each organizational interaction. This is the example I gave you of reliability, where donor service is concerned. Do they, when they reach out to the Boys and Girls Clubs, do they have a expectation, a positive expectation that they'll get what they need? Maybe it's a question answered, maybe it's an address correction. Whatever it is, will they get that from the organization? Do they receive timely thank yous? Remember on that chart that 13% of the people left because they were not thanked? Well, a timely thank you is essential here, and it's one of the easiest, cheapest things any organization can do to hold on to its donors. Now, there are 2 things to know about thank yous that are important. I mean, a lot of folks will say, well, you have to get the thank yous out within 24 hours, or the larger gifts have to be signed personally by the executive director. I mean, there's all kinds of myths and nonsense around this, but basically there are only 2 things you need to be mindful of, and they both have to be done together. One, that the thank you be heartfelt. It can't just be a computerized tax receipt. That's not a thank you. That's a tax receipt. So one, it be heartfelt, and it doesn't have to be a long or lengthy letter. It can simply be a quick handwritten note that expresses gratitude. It can be a computer-generated note, but it ought to have a tone that says, thanks, we really appreciate it, and your contribution was put to good and immediate use. And connected to that, it has to be done within a period of time, let's say 3 days to a week, so that the donor knows that you received the money, and then by the tone of your thank you note, they know, or she knows, he knows, that you're grateful for that. So make sure when you're thinking of thank yous that you're putting those 2 things together. Do you offer your donors the chance to make their views known? This is again, the act of giving is a human relationship. Human relationships, unless you have a relationship with a rock, are 2-way. Both parties speak, both parties give feedback. So are you giving your donors a chance to give feedback, either through surveys, or by calling them occasionally, or by putting something in your newsletter saying, if you have suggestions, please send them back here? Or are you using online feedback mechanisms, of which there are many in the market? They're very inexpensive or free, and they're easy to do. And feedback, the opportunity to make your views known, is one of the least expensive, quickest, and least difficult to execute activities you can undertake to maintain and increase donor retention. Does the donor either get a feeling that he's part or she's part of an important cause, and also that her involvement is appreciated. If you're not doing that, then you have a really fundamental relationship problem, because you're not acknowledging the individual and recognizing her or his importance to the organization. And of course, a quick way to check that is to look at the correspondence, to look at the communications you send to your donors. Just circle the number of U's that are in the copy. If there are a lot of U's, Y-O-U, and not very many we's or us, then you're in good shape. The pronoun that speaks a personal contact, personal relationship, and not an egocentric organization is the pronoun you. It is your generosity, your commitment, you who have made a difference to young men and women in America. If the copy reflects the we have Boys and Girls Club are wonderful. We have more kids that we're helping than any other organization. We are doing this, we are doing that. Then you're failing to give the donor a feeling that her involvement is appreciated and that she's part of an important cause. So be very alert to avoid institutional or organizational bragging. No one really cares what the size of your offices are or anything else about the organization other than you're helping. Excuse me, let me just get a little water here. Other than you're helping young men and women, and it's making a big difference in their lives, and it's all because of you, Mr. or Miss Donor. So make certain that there's a personal note in all this. And are you telling your donors who's being helped? Are you telling real people's stories about the kids and the mentors and others who are involved in Boys and Girls Club? Do you use photographs? Do you use simple stories, moving stories, emotional stories? Statistics are deadly. Don't use statistics. No one really cares or understands. Talk about what the donor is accomplishing through the eyes of a young person who has been helped by that donor. So this is a very human, emotional business, and you can do a lot to hold on to your donors simply by treating them and yourselves as human. To graph this, and we needn't spend a lot of time, but there is a whole science behind understanding how this personal connection works, and I did want to call your attention to there's a quick way to find out whether someone is committed or not because of what you're doing, and that's a three-part question. You can see it here in the middle of the right-hand side of this chart. When you ask someone these three questions: I am committed. I am a committed Boys and Girls Club donor. 2, I feel a sense of loyalty to the Boys and Girls Clubs, and Boys and Girls Clubs is my favorite charitable organization. Those three questions, when they are scored, you ask people to rate them 1 to 10 on each one of those. When the 3 of them are averaged, that score will indicate whether someone is committed, highly committed, or whether someone is low commitment. I don't needn't get into that very much right now. The important thing is that this, as I said earlier, this is all measurable. Excuse me, and you can identify what needs to be changed or improved in the organization. The reason this is important financially is that for every point that a donor's commitment improves, every 1%, it improves. On average in the United States, this is worth $170 in increase in lifetime value of the donor. Again, too detailed for this session, but my point, the only point you need to take away from this session is that by perfecting the donor relationship, doing the taking the actions that I outlined in those 7 key drivers, you can improve the financial value of donors dramatically. Now, let's first of all, before I start this next session on what stands in the way of good retention, let me ask if there are any questions here. I don't see any yet. You can send them in by typing them on the dashboard, and if we get them and we can answer them during the session, we will. If not, I'll answer them afterward in individual emails. Let's look at the barriers to retention. What stands in the way of really holding on to your donors? Well, the first barrier, and it's true for virtually every organization, is what is known as the silo. That is that the walling off of responsibilities and activities within an organization. In the fundraising sense, the major gift people don't talk to the direct mail people, the direct mail people don't talk to the web people, and the major gift people don't talk to anybody. Right there is an example of an organization in trouble when it comes to donor retention, because there is not a common focus on the donor. The focus is on the functional activity in each of those silos. So unless the direct mail people are working with the web people, are working with the donor service people, and everyone is focused on the same message and the same set of actions aimed toward honoring the donor, the organization is going to have a retention problem. The second barrier is what I call false attribution, and it's let me illustrate what it is so it's easiest to understand. We have the end of the year season coming, and if your organization has a great year-end appeal, someone in that organization is going to say, yeah, we did well because the copy was brilliant. Or someone will say, yeah, we did well because the website was terrific. Or we picked the right segment of the mailing list. Or there'll be all kinds of claims for why something works. And that is an example of false attribution. False because that's not why this worked well. It worked well because along the line, this organization has taken good care of its donors. Yes, the appeal reflects that, but the reality is that someone answered the donors' questions in the course of the year, or the communications folks were great at explaining what the Boys and Girls Club did that year in very human terms, or a writer was great at telling a story, and all these things connect. So there is no one place that should get credit or should get a bonus or should get anything else within the organization. It's the whole organization that is responsible for that performance and is responsible for keeping the donor active with Boys and Girls Club. So be very careful and be very suspicious if you hear people saying, well, it was this activity that really produced this terrific result, because it's not true, and it's dangerous to assume that it is. The third barrier is poor differentiation. Remember in that chart of why people leave? Well, that's when they say other organizations more deserving, or they didn't know that they were giving to the organization. This is differentiation. How do you separate Boys and Girls Club from other organizations in your community that are doing somewhat the same thing. If you can't do that in a persuasive manner, then the differentiation between you, showing the difference between you and other organizations is poor, and you run the risk of losing those donors at a far higher rate than you normally would if there is sharp differentiation. So that is a barrier to retention. If you use a lot of premiums and tchotchkes, by this I mean mailing labels, calendars, backpacks, plush toys, you name it, the chances of holding on to people go down remarkably, because the use of a premium or a gift that is not related to the mission of the organization gets at something that is not in the psychology of giving. It's what the psychologists call an extrinsic value as opposed to an intrinsic value. So the pressure is often pretty great in many organizations to use premiums and tchotchkes because it helps boost the initial acquisition of members. You do get a higher response rate. The problem is that it also sets expectations for that to continue, and that becomes an expensive and very counterproductive process. So be aware that while premiums may help in the short run, in terms of the long run, the lifetime value of donors, the retention rates, they're not helpful. In fact, they are dangerous, and after analyzing literally hundreds of organizations that have premium programs over the years, I can tell you that the lifetime value of premium-driven programs is not good at all, and nowhere nearly as good as organizations that don't engage in that. Chasing the unicorn, and by that I mean trying to find the next new thing. It's a very common practice often among executive directors and boards of directors and others in an organization that say, well, I'll give you an example. Oh, direct mail is so expensive and the internet is free. Why don't we abandon direct mail and instead do online fundraising? And there goes the fundraising, because online fundraising is not nearly as effective as direct mail fundraising, and to abandon one thing without knowing for certain you have a workable substitute, of course, is folly. Or someone in the board meeting will say, you know, our donors are pretty old, and you know they're going to die off, and then we're not going to have any donors. Oh yeah, let's go get some. Let's get some young donors. Let's get online and use social media and Facebook and Twitter and so forth, Instagram to get younger donors. Well, let me tell you something. Younger donors in American fundraising have an age of around 52. There is no such thing as a young donor, the way we think about it in the 18 to 25-year-old class. This is not practical. It is not proven, and it is chasing the unicorn. And so things that divert your money and your time from holding on and doing what you should be doing with your regular donors by way of proven retention techniques is what I call chasing the unicorn. So let's look at 5 simple, inexpensive steps that we can take to improve retention. And there's no one listening today that can't put these into effect. Whoop, let's go back. First of all, say thank you. Remember again, 13% of the people leave. Another percentage also leave because they weren't thanked. Another percentage leave because they don't think they matter to the organization. This is all wrapped up in the issue of saying thanks, of gratitude and recognition. So say thank you. Now there are a couple ways to do this. I've already mentioned you can write a very simple, heartfelt note. You can do a computer-generated note if you want, provided it's sent out in a timely way and it is heartfelt. Doesn't matter so much how you produce it. It's the tone of it and the speed with which it goes out. Probably the most effective thing you can do if you're in a position to do it or have volunteers or can contract with a service to do it is to pick up the phone and say thank you. Most people do not get thanked to begin with, and very few people get thanked by phone, but they really appreciate it. And if they say, oh, you shouldn't spend the time or money doing that, they're not sincere about it, because all the tests and research we've done over the years on this indicate that telephone thank yous are enormously effective. In fact, a test run by PBS for its stations indicated that they can improve retention rates by as much as 24% by simply delivering a 1 minute or less than 1 minute thank you call, either live or by voicemail, and it seems to work pretty well either way. So say thank you. It's very important. Improve donor service. If you're not answering your phones promptly, if the donor has a difficult time finding out how to contact you, and that's a problem with an awful lot of websites and in the nonprofit world, it's a sort of like an Easter egg hunt. You have to find the email address or the telephone number to call. But make certain that when someone calls, there's a prompt response, that there's a knowledgeable person at the other end of the line. Don't assign those incoming calls to the junior assistant intern to do at lunch hour. That's too. We're dealing with the lifeblood of your organization here in terms of the financial assets. So make certain that there's someone at the other end of the line. It's particularly important coming up now upon the year-end giving season. People will have questions. People will want to know how to send you stock. They may want to know that. They may want to know something about credit card giving. Heavens knows what they'll want to know, but be available to answer their call. Be boring. Now, what do I mean? What do I mean by that? This goes to the issue of consistency. And when I say be boring, I mean be consistent in your messages and resist the temptation inside the organization that always says, oh my heavens, last year we used that same piece for year-end giving, or we used that same theme, or we used that same looking package again and again. Well, let me tell you, donors, unlike your staff, and unlike probably you yourself, aren't sitting around waiting for the Boys and Girls Club year-end appeal to arrive and inspect it to see whether it's different than what they received last year. No, they're not. Rather, they will be put off by anything that is terribly inconsistent. And this is where so many organizations make a mistake. They think that flashy, creative, or spectacular execution of a video or some branding exercise is what is needed, when in fact it's just the opposite of that. What is needed is a good and clear message delivered consistently over and over again. So resist the temptation that springs up in every organization over boredom, because we're sending the same thing again and again, and send it again and again, because that is what makes the world a difference in retention. Give your donors, please, an opportunity to share their opinions, to speak with you, to give you suggestions, to give you criticism. Criticism is very important. The people, we found again in research that the people who criticize are often the best donors, and therefore you can't assume that they should be ignored. In fact, you should not assume that any donor should be ignored. And the more ways you can give them to give you feedback on your website, through surveys, through putting an extra line or so on your response forms, by having your inbound telephone people, your call center, ask them questions at the end. All of that is very helpful, and there's a reason. For example, those of you who fly or stay in hotels, there's a reason that when you finish that last flight with American Airlines, you get a pop-up survey from them asking how that flight was. Or if you stay at a hotel chain, almost every hotel chain sends you a survey. I mean, my heavens, even the International House of Pancakes does a survey on their breakfast receipts. So there's a reason for that, and that's because these companies understand that when you ask someone's opinion, it shows that you care, and it shows that you will listen, and it makes a big difference. So please understand that you need to be asking for feedback, and pick up the phone. This is increasingly we're becoming again a phone nation. This time with smartphones, but whether your donors have a smartphone or a regular phone, the human voice communicating one person to another is very important. So you can use the phone, as I said, to thank people, or you can use the phone to call them up and say, hey, we've been thinking about starting this program in this neighborhood, wanted your opinion. Give us your opinion. Or you could just call someone up and say, this is the 5th year in a row that you've contributed to Boys and Girls Club, and we're really grateful, and wanted to thank you and invite you to stop down and just chat, or just chat on the phone. I mean, staying humanly involved with your donors is very important. So say thank you, improve your donor services, be consistent, be boring. Don't look for the magic bullet in the year-end appeal. Seek feedback from your donors, and pick up the phone. If you follow those 5 steps, you will do dramatic improvement in holding on to your donors, increasing their loyalty, and increasing their value to you. Now, if you'd like to learn more about retention, here are some resources. I have a website with some content on it that may be helpful, retentionfundraising.com. I publish a daily blog, theagitator.net, which deals with a lot of things involving fundraising, but retention is one of the main themes of the Agitator. The company, The Donor Voice, specializes and does a lot of research on the issue of retention, and you can read their white papers and blogs at that website, thedonorvoice.com. Now, if you're not familiar with the organization SOFI.org, you should be, because this is one of the great free resources for fundraisers in organizations of any size or type. What they do is they collect examples and narratives about different campaigns, different techniques. For example, they have a thank you letter clinic on SOFI, and you can go there, and it's like a wonderfully big attic in your grandma's house if your grandma was a fundraiser. Just lots of great stuff. And of course, I have a book, Retention Fundraising, which you can get at Amazon. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email, roger@theagitator.net, and I'll try to answer them. So my time is up. I thank you for yours, and if there are questions, we can ask them now. And if you don't have time now or don't feel you want to ask them at this point, just send me an email and I'll answer them for you. So thank you. I wish you all the best. I thank you profusely for what you and Boys and Girls Club do. It means a lot to a lot of us in terms of the present and the future. So thank you, and I wish you all the best for a great year-end giving season.